The roar of engines had never sounded so defeated. The famous motorcycle club, feared, respected, and known for bikes that thundered like storms, stood in a quiet, helpless circle around a machine that refused to live again. The Hells Angels motorcycle, their pride and symbol of legacy, sat dead in the center of the dusty garage, steam still slipping from its pipes like a dying breath. Three of the toughest bikers, men who weren't used to failure, stood stiff and silent as frustration tightened their jaws. And beyond the haze of smoke and disappointment, the door creaked open to reveal the last man anyone expected to see in a place like this. An old mechanic in a worn leather jacket, rolling forward in a wheelchair, his silver beard glowing under the dim yellow bulb. No one believed he could help. No one believed he even belonged there. But in the next few minutes, he would stun every single one of them. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of people who are underestimated every day, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support truly helps keep stories like this alive. The day had begun with arrogance. The bikers had brought in the motorcycle after it suddenly died during a long ride. They tried everything, swapping parts, tightening bolts, draining fuel, even cursing loudly into the engine. As if sheer anger could spark it back to life, nothing worked. By noon, their confidence was buried under a growing mountain of tools and failure. These were men known for never backing down, but even they had limits. The bike's owner paced in circles, muttering that it had to run by sundown, that this machine wasn't just metal, it was history, loyalty, brotherhood. Losing it felt like losing a part of themselves. And then came the voice, soft, worn, but steady, that cut through their frustration. Mind if I take a look? The old man's name was Roy. Most people in town barely remembered him. Once upon a time, he was the best mechanic anyone knew, famous for reviving bikes that other experts declared hopeless. But life changed after a brutal accident on the highway. A runaway truck crushed him against a guardrail, shattering his legs and ending the life he knew. He spent years hidden away, haunted by the memory of roaring engines he could no longer ride. The world moved on without him. Bikers who used to line up outside his garage found new shops, new mechanics. Roy simply faded into the background, a legend buried under time. So when he rolled into that garage now, no one knew what to say. The bikers exchanged doubtful looks. Could a man who couldn't even stand fix what three strong mechanics had failed to understand? But there was something in Roy's eyes, something calm and almost painfully familiar to anyone who had ever truly loved a machine. He didn't ask for permission twice. He just moved closer to the broken motorcycle, the wheels of his chair creaking softly, and let his weathered hand rest gently on the metal as if greeting an old friend. The bikers watched in silence as Roy leaned forward, inhaling the faint scent of burnt fuel. He didn't rush. He didn't panic. Instead, he listened to the soft ticking of cooling pipes, to the whisper of steam, to the language only old mechanics spoke. His hands trembled slightly, but they moved with precision. He touched each part the way a doctor checks for a pulse. And then, as if remembering something important, he asked the men to turn off all sounds in the shop. Even the faint music from the radio was silenced. The room grew still. Roy closed his eyes. A full minute passed. The men began to wonder if he had fallen asleep, and then he spoke. He explained that the sound the engine made before it died something the bikers had barely noticed meant the timing chain had slipped. The heat and pressure had bent to tiny internal components so subtly that normal mechanics would never spot it. But he had heard it deeply, because he had heard it decade ago in another bike belonging to a friend he could never forget. He asked for one wrench, one specific size. His old fingers wrapped around the handle, and for a moment he seemed to be fighting more than metal. He was fighting the years that had buried him. Sweat rolled down his forehead, and every muscle in his arms trembled, but his eyes shone with stubborn determination. Slowly, painfully, he adjusted the part nobody else had even checked. He whispered to the machine as he worked, as if coaxing it back to life from the edge of death. When he finally asked them to try starting it, the men exchanged nervous glances. The leader pressed the ignition. At first, nothing, a long, lifeless silence, and then a pulse, a rumble, a cough that turned into a deep, thunderous roar. The motorcycle came alive, shaking the walls with a familiar vibration that bikers felt in their bones. The shop lit up with the sound of victory. The bikers shouted, laughed, slapped each other's backs, and stared wide-eyed at Roy as if he were a miracle. But Roy didn't celebrate. He simply touched the handlebars softly, almost tenderly, and exhaled a long, shaky breath. For him, It wasn't about impressing anyone. It wasn't about being the hero of the day. It was something deeper, proving to himself that he still mattered, that the accident hadn't taken everything, that he still had a place in the world of roaring engines and metal hearts. The leader of the biker stepped forward, eyes unexpectedly wet. He placed his hand on Roy's shoulder and whispered words that needed no reply. Respect, honor, gratitude. The kind of gratitude tough men rarely express but feel with absolute sincerity. They offered Roy free repairs, rides anytime he wanted, protection, and a place in their brotherhood. But Roy simply smiled. What he gained that day wasn't a reward. It was something far more precious, purpose. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It truly helps keep these emotional stories alive for everyone. Before we end, please comment below. Would you trust the quiet old man in your town with something important? And just like that, the sun dipped low outside the garage, casting long shadows across the floor as Roy sat quietly beside the living, breathing motorcycle. For the first time in years, he felt whole again. And in the silence that followed, every biker there knew one thing. With absolute certainty, strength isn't always measured in muscle. Sometimes it sits in a wheelchair with silver hair and hands that never forgot how to heal the broken.